Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. So for today's session I thought we'd have a bit of fun and make some cute and sparkly little festive trees with a whole load of little presents underneath. This is a fun one to do and I take you through the whole thing step by step so you can just sit back, relax, watch the process unfold and then have a go at making one yourself. Everything you need for this is in the details below the video description, so I put all the details down there for you, including all the equipment and the clay, although for the majority of clay, as you'll see, it's just using leftover bits that you've got. We create a cane to make the branches of the tree, and then another little cane just to do the ribbon on the presents, but other than that, everything is just really straightforward. You can follow exactly what I do, or just at any point change things up and make one of your own. I've added a bit of ribbon on top, so these can be hanging decorations, but of course they'd be lovely without that, just for your tabletop or just having around the house. And I've made quite a small one, but you can make any size you like. So let's get started. And we'll get the clay we need to create our little tree. We're going to start by making our tree. We're going to make the cane that does the branches, and then we'll use a little bit of red to make the basket that the tree sits in. I've discovered from doing this a few times that the easiest way of doing this is to create our separate parts of the tree, get them all baked, do the same with the pot, get it baked, and then we put it all together when it's baked. It's much easier to do it that way. Although of course if you prefer, you can try and put it all together unbaked. It's completely up to you. I've got all the colours I need, so I've got 3 colours to do the branches. So I've gone for a dark green, a lovely mid-emerald green, and then a lighter green. And all of these amounts are 7 grams or 1/4 of an ounce of clay. I've got white, which we're going to put around the outside to give the snowy look, and I say a red, which is going to be the tub or the pot that the tree sits in. So I'll put that on one side for now. I'm going to put the white on one side for now. Don't need those anymore because what I've done is I've taken those colours and conditioned them to give myself a nice thin sheet. If you're unsure about conditioning polymer clay, how we do it or why we do it, I do have a video and I'll put the details of that in the description below this video. So we are going to do a skinner blend of our 3 colours, and I say I've conditioned these and put these through on a medium setting of my pasta machine. So for me that is setting number 3, and again all the details of the pasta machine settings and what size they are will be in the details below. I'm going to create a skinner blend with these 3 colours, a very simple one, so I'm just going to cut diagonally through the 2 end pieces, straight down the middle piece. Put those pieces together in this way, so that we've got the nice diagonal going through. And the same with that one. Give it a roll, making sure the clay is nicely adhered, and then I'll pick it up, fold it, and I'm going to put it fold through the pasta machine on a slightly thicker setting, so for me setting number 2. Every time it comes through I will pick it up at the bottom and refold it top to bottom so we get a nice blend from one colour through to the other. If you're unsure about skinner blends or just want to see what it looks like when it goes through a pasta machine, then I have got a video tutorial which takes you through that, and again I'll put the details to that in the video description below. So I'll put this through, make our skinner blend, and bring you back when we've got the nice blend from one colour through to the other. We have our blend completed, so we've gone from the lighter green to that lovely dark. Now of course you can use whatever colours you want to do this blend, but I think it looks nice when we've got a wintry tree with snow on it to have a really dark part to the branches. All I'm going to do is going to fold that in half and put it through now so that the fold is at the side of the pasta machine, dark end first to give myself a longer, thinner strip, and that is going to go through on the same setting of the pasta machine, so still for me setting number 2. And now I want to get as long and thinner strip as I can, so for me I'm going to put it back down to my thinnest setting, which is setting number 9 on the pasta machine. Put it through dark end first, but if you're unsure about your pasta machine, simply go down one setting at a time till you get to your thinnest usable setting and get yourself a nice long thin strip of clay. And again, I have put the details below of what to do if you don't have a pasta machine. And of course, if you do have a pasta machine for polymer clay, it should be dedicated to polymer clay use, not then used for anything edible. And on my machine, 0 is thick and 9 is thin. So I'm going to go straight down to setting number 9, dark end first again, to give myself a really nice long thin strip. So there we go. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it up from the dark end first. So rolled up with the dark on the middle, got ourselves a nice plug of polymer clay, and we are simply going to put this down into quarters. Don't worry if your quarters are uneven, this is a natural thing we're making, so if every slice of the branch looks different, that is absolutely fine. Having got them down, I'm just going to pick them up and very gently pull the lighter green up around the side a little bit, and then push the bottom so it's narrower. You can either do it up in the air or down on the tile, whichever you feel most comfortable with. But do 2 pieces, put those 2 together, do the next 2 pieces, put those together, and then you can put all 4 pieces together. To start with, pressing just at the bottom, and then pull over at the top to create a point. Just push down on the ends to make sure they're nice and flat, and then we're going to chop that in the middle, put the 2 pieces together, and that's the main part of our branch done. So all we've got to do now is to add some snow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with my thumb and finger, I'm pressing on these 2 bits because I want to make this more of a square. Again, you see it's starting to go square by doing that. So pressing on the corners, do the same again until you have a piece that you can turn on its side and make very roughly square shaped. Once we've got it to that stage, we will go and find our piece of white. So here's the clay we conditioned earlier, and I've put it on setting number 3 at the moment, but I'm going to go 1 setting thinner, so setting number 4, give myself a longer strip. Put the cane on the clay and chop top and bottom. Take off one end, and without actually putting it in place, we want a piece that's going to go not quite up to the dark end, roughly round, and again not quite up to the dark. So we're going to take off that excess. So in a minute it's going to be wrapped like that, but not quite up to the middle part of the branches because the snow won't reach that far. Put that piece on one side, collect all your other pieces together and roll them into a long thin sausage, about 4 times the length of your cane. And then chop even pieces. I've actually got 5, which is perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create little inserts in the side, which makes it look like the snow's piled up on the side of our branch. So something like a cable needle, or one of these little rollers you can buy, or even something like a thin pen or pencil. Just push down to create a groove along the side. And then inset your little white piece. Do another one further up. A couple on this side. And it doesn't matter if they're uneven, because as I said, if every slice of your branch looks different, that's absolutely fine. This piece tends to go longer as you do it, so press it down slightly shorter again, and then we'll have one just on the tip. Put that down there. So now we have all those little bits of extra snow that are going to push in. Now we can take our piece that we'd already cut, and remember, not quite, but just press it gently down, wrap it all the way around till it goes down so we've got that dark bit left, and then we will reshape it exactly the same as we did to get it back into that square shape. So I'm just pressing nice and evenly down the sides, same pressure down each side to end up with a nice square shape. So we're going to now reduce this down to make our branches. We're going to have 4 different sizes of branches, so therefore we need 4 different things to put the branches on. And when I say things, I mean moulds or forms. I'm going to use this set of measuring spoons because they are great for doing different sizes with this sort of things, and I will be using the upside down parts of them. They come from Asda in the UK, Walmart in the US, and I'm sure they must be available at other places around the world as well. So have a look for something, or something similar. If you've got any nice rounded spoons in different sizes, they will work. You can also use the Sculpey hollow bead maker, because I would use those for, so again you've got nice differing sizes to work with. And if you don't have any of those, or don't have availability of those, then find 4 empty drinking cans, carefully cut off so you've only got the base left. I put masking tape around the edges to make sure I don't cut myself, and then you could use 4 of those, use the dome on the inside to create your pieces on those instead. So whatever you want to use, you need 4 different pieces with a dome on the top to create the effect that we're going for. I'm going to be using the measuring spoons, so we're going to reduce this down into 4 different sizes and then we'll take slices off. So the first one we want is going down to that size, which is about 3/4 of an inch, or just over 2 centimetres in height that way. So we're going to reduce this down till it gets to that size. When I've got it to a size that's getting close, I will use my measuring sheet. This is freely downloadable from www.printablepaper.net, and I've just laminated it so that I can use it several times. I've gone for the 4 squares to an inch one. You can download it in centimetres if you prefer. And what I'm looking for is when I've got this piece, so it's about 1/2 an inch across all the sides, but of course at the moment it's still a square cane. So keep away from the, that's the inside of the branch, that's the outside. So we're going to press down to round off all the way down the length to give ourselves more of a branch shape. And when you look, you'll see that actually it's still a lot bigger than we've got. So what I'm going to do with my thumb and finger, I'm going to pinch in that way, and I'm going to press in all the way down the length. That creates a ridge on the sides. So again, with thumb and finger, I'm just evening that out. And I'm looking for a piece that, say, is just over the 3/4 of an inch. So I can now rest that on the side, have a look across the length, and see that actually that's about the right size. If I look, it's pretty spot on to the one that I did earlier. So we need about 16 slices to create our first 2 sets. So what I would suggest you do is to cut off just a smallish bit, probably about 1/3 of the total piece. Put that on one side for our other sizes, just so you don't get carried away. And if you want to, you can then mark that out sort of halfway. So that's got to be 8 slices, that's got to be 4 slices, that's got to be 4 slices, just to give you a guide when you're cutting. Once you've cut all your slices, with the leftover end that you took off, just take off a small piece, probably about a small pea size, and just put that on top of the dome of whatever form you are using. Just gives us something to stick the branches onto. And then you're going to take each one and simply lay them down the side. One of the things I do like to do is just to push down the edges slightly, just to narrow them off so they're not as chunky. That does of course leave fingerprints. Now I'm using FIMO Soft, so I know I can very gently, hardly touching it, just rub over, and that will remove the fingerprints. If your clay is too soft to do that with, then you can get something like the cable needle and just gently roll over if you want to do the edges like that. Then we're going to put one to one side. one there, either side there to create the 4, and then 4 more in between. Press them down slightly to make sure that they're touching the middle piece, and then we're going to take a little bit more of our excess, and again just put a dot on top. Take another piece that's about pea-sized, roll it into a ball, roll it just on one end to give a slight cone shape, and then press it down flat on your work surface, and then repeat in exactly the same fashion, putting your 8 pieces round, but this time going from the top down, because this makes this piece slightly smaller than that piece. Those are our 2 pieces. They've now been completed, and I've cut myself about 5 inches or 12.5 centimetres of 2mm wire. Again, I'll put the details of the wire in the details below, and I've made sure it's a relatively straight piece. And what we need to do is we need to create a hole in these so that once they're baked they can slip down the wire. However, it's easier to make the hole with a piece or something that's slightly wider, so something like a needle, if you've got a thicker needle, or I've just used here a thicker piece of wire. So what I'm going to do, through the middle of this one, I'm going to push down and wiggle to create a hole. Same with this one, whilst it's still on the table, push down and wiggle, because it's easier to get a nice centre piece. Lift that piece up, push your wire through, and then, so you can see, put it into the middle piece. I'm then going to put those pieces down so they slightly overlap the previous piece, press it down slightly, and remove the wire. So those are our 2 layers, and all we're going to do now is we're going to very gently curl up the bottoms of each of the branches. If you find it all difficult, use something like the cable needle and curl that round and let that do the curl for you, particularly on the bottom layers. It's sometimes easier. But again, I find it easier doing this afterwards when you put the second layer on than trying and doing them when you've got the first layer, because you tend to distort the curves when you put the second one on. So what we're looking for is something along those lines, where we've got the 2 layers, and then we're going to repeat that in differing sizes through the next 3 levels of the spoons. So I'll stop each time I get this down to the right size, and then jump forward to when we've got them done on the spoons for you. So the next size down is just under 3/4 of an inch across this way. So I'm just going to do as we did before and just press in with my thumb and finger till we get it to the right size. It's also good to compare it to the previous size you had, so you can see there's a definite difference. And again, we will take 16 slices and complete the next row in exactly the same way as we did with the one for the larger size. Having finished the next size down, the third size we're going for is about 1/2 inch or 1.25 centimetres across. So again, just reduce that down. It's about right. Again, 16 slices, repeat exactly the same as we did before. Okay, that's the next size done. And then the last one we want to go down to is really teeny tiny. So between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, so between, or probably just about bang on 1 centimetre, just slightly over 1 centimetre. So again, get that down to the right size, and this time we're going to take 20 slices, and this time I'll keep filming just as a bit of a recap so you can see exactly what we're doing. Start with, we do exactly the same as we did before, so the 2 layers, 16 slices, and then we add an extra additional layer, and I will slow down and talk you through that when we get to that stage. So the first thing I'm going to do, having got it down to the right size, which is about there, is cut myself 20 slices, and once I've done that I will fast forward through getting it to this stage with this smallest piece. Okay, so there's the top layer done. And what we're going to do now is we're going to find, probably on the leftover end of the cane you haven't used, some of the really dark clay. Again, about a small pea-sized piece. As before, roll it into a cone. So I do keep wiping my hands in between time doing things, particularly because the green comes off on your fingers, so that when I'm pressing down on these edges I don't get green all over it. Same as before, but this time going right up to that top edge. This is just the very top piece, and we only need 4 pieces to go down on either side. With your wire or your needle, whichever you're using, again, poke straight down. This time push it slightly further onto the wire, because what we're going to do is we are going to create a point just with your thumb and finger, pulling it up whilst it's on the wire. Okay, and then we should be able to just twist to make sure the wire is going to come off nicely. As before, push that down and centre him nicely at the point of our tree. Give it a little twist. Make sure the top 4 are also curling upwards. And there's the top of our tree. So you should now have your 4 pieces all in the differing sizes. That will mean you can stack them together to create your tree. They are now ready to bake, but before we bake them, let's make the little pot that the tree is going to sit in, and then we can bake the whole lot all at once. To create the pot, I've taken the 7 grams, 1/4 ounce of red clay, rolled it into a ball, make sure there's no air trapped inside, and then I'm just going to roll it into a sausage, but I'm going to try and make it so that the bottom end is slightly less than the top. It's got a nice bit of gradient. Press it flat, so we've got a nice flat bottom to our piece. And again, just roll it and keep on doing that until I've got a piece which is roughly pot-shaped at the bottom. You can then roll it and cut through to give yourself a pot shape. Make sure it's nice and round. And then with something like a nice thick needle, again this is thicker than the wire that I'm going to use because it's got a nice point on it, I'm just going to press down and twist till it gets right to the bottom. And then I'm going to work on decorating the pot whilst it's on the needle. Now you can decorate it any way you like. I'm going to use cutters, which I'll show you in a second, and then like a little rope detail around the top, but you could just take a strip of clay and put it around the top. You can put bobbles on here, inset beads, little sort of diamondy sparkly bits, whatever you want to do. You can also put on the top, make a nice strip, or the sort of strip we're going to use as a ribbon around the little presents we're going to make later. So again, think about that, and you can always fast forward to that part of the video first if you want to decorate your pot. What I'm going to use, because I'm very lucky, is I have a pack pen. Now this pack pen is great because it's got teeny tiny little cutters, so I'm going to use the Christmas set. I've got the holly leaf, the snowflake, I'm going to use both of those. There is also a little bell, a little Christmas tree, and a little gingerbread man. It's a great set because it comes with this. These just twist off and change depending on when you want to use them. Although, to be honest, if I'm just doing a few, I just simply use them without anything else. But it's got a plunger, so if your piece gets stuck in the bottom, you simply push that through and it pushes them out. So to decorate the pot, I'm going to do 4 little holly leaves. And then 4 snowflakes. Starting with the snowflakes because they're the bigger. Just lay them on. Go around the other side. Then quarters. And then I should just have room for a holly leaf in between. As I say, you can decorate yours however you like. And I'll put details of the pack pen below for anyone who's interested in that. And then I'm going to create a little rope around the top, and I'm doing that with a long thin strip of blue, and that has been extruded. There are various extruders on the market. There's the Makins one. I'm very lucky that I've got the Lucy Clay check extruder, which is very, very good. And whichever one you use, the disc I have used is the one with the small holes, which are about 2mm. Again, you can roll this by hand, just rolling it smaller and smaller and smaller to get yourself a nice long thin strip. But obviously doing it with an extruder is easier. I will put the details of the extruders below the video, as with everything else. So all I'm going to do to create the rope is to take the strand and, holding it ever so gently, just gently twist in one direction only. Once I've done a small bit, I move it back inside my hand. Again, hardly holding it at all. Keep twisting round and round and round to get a nice even twist of a piece of rope. And because I don't want to press it in too hard, but I want it to sit nicely, I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid clay, and just with a paintbrush, just add it round the top. You could use PVA glue instead for this bit if you wanted to, just to help it adhere. But obviously liquid clay gives a stronger bond. And then I'm going to chop into the rope in the direction in which those spirals are going, so that you can add it just loosely to the top to start with, just on that top edge. And when you get around to the join, you can chop in the same direction along the spiral, and it means the two pieces should join nicely together to look continuous. And just make sure it's in the right place. And your pot is done. So holding it ever so gently, twist. So all the movement's coming with the pin and not on the pot. And just twist until it's removed, and your little pot is ready to bake along with your pieces. When you're ready, you can bake them on a tile. Something like this works perfectly. You can use a baking tray, in which case put something underneath, a piece of card or something, particularly if the clay is actually touching the baking tray, to make sure it doesn't get messy. And then I will tent the whole thing in a piece of aluminium foil, tent it over the top so it's not actually touching the clay. And in that way, should your oven spike in temperature, both the clay is protected and the oven is protected. And bake according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. Whilst that's baking, we will move on to creating some teeny tiny presents. Making the presents is a lot of fun. They are teeny tiny, but they look good as soon as you add the little sort of extra decoration on the top of them. So I will show you how to do that. The underneath present is a very simple block or round of clay, literally nothing more than that. So just stack yourself some layers of clay, chop out pieces, and for sizings, as you can see, they're very small. It's less than ½ an inch, so about 1 centimetre across either side, and only sort of like half that in height. And then I do a variation, but none of them are really above that size because we want them to fit around the Christmas tree. You can use whatever colours you have to hand. I have a whole variety of colours I'm going with. So again, just use whatever leftover bits you have. There's too many colours to sort of mention them all, but just say don't stick to what I'm doing. Use whatever you have. But what I will show you is how we're going to make the ribbons and the bows and the finishing detail so that you can create your own little presents. Making the presents is very straightforward. I've just put a piece of clay through my thickest setting on the pasta machine. So for me that's setting 0. I'm just going to double it up. Give it a slight roll to make sure the 2 layers are nicely adhered, and then using something like the measuring sheet, I'm just going to chop myself some little present shapes, and there are the presents ready for wrapping. So there's a few more I've done here, so I can show you as examples, but obviously you can make as many different colours as you want and different sizes as you want. Creating the ribbon is very simple. I've just taken myself 3 colours and measured them out. They're each on setting number 3, but obviously you can vary the settings as well to give you different thicknesses of colours within the ribbon. But for this one, just kept it simple, done all exactly the same. And they're about 2.5 by about 1.5 inches, 6 centimetres by about 3.5 centimetres, and I'm just going to layer them up. So I'm going to do purple, white, and then we'll have blue in the middle. And then cut in half, layer the 2 sides up, and that is effectively our ribbon. And then I'm just going to roll it that way to start with, to give myself a wide enough bit that's useful and easier to roll. And then I'm going to roll it till it's about 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres long. You can also pull it slightly, because that's the right sort of width for what we need, and that will even be enough to go around the outside of your pot that I mentioned earlier. Then I'm going to put it back through the pasta machine, starting on my thickest setting, and then I'll end up on setting number 2, which is a nice thickness for the size of present that we are making. And if you chop down, you'll see we now have a nice thin ribbon, thin enough to create pieces and create presents. And all I'm going to do is take very thin slices with my blade, and then we'll wrap the presents in these thin slices. Here are some other colour variations I've done. This one was green, blue with red in the middle, red, white and a sort of tealy coloured blue, teal coloured blue, white and gold. And then I also did blue, gold, red, dark blue, white, turquoise, red, gold and purple. So say, just experiment, use whatever you have to hand and create yourself 4 or 5 small amounts of strips, because even if you don't use more for the presents, they're really good for other polymer clay use, particularly for borders or adding things into canes or creating kaleidoscopes, of course. Covering the presents is simple. Don't need to worry about any mucky ends because we've got the bottom of the present that's not going to be seen. You simply press it on and very gently wrap it around the present. I tend to use my thumbnail just to cut through and then turn around and go in the other direction. And that leaves you a little bit of spare ribbon. Hold on to that. The piece that's now wrapped, I will press very gently just on the top centre, just to make it slightly flatter on the bottom. And now we get to the fun part of decorating. So a piece that size is good. So the first decoration we're going to do needs a piece about that size. So I'm just going to roll in the middle so you can see I flatten that bit down. And then this bit I'm just going to pull up and fold over. This bit, pull up and fold over. Okay, so it's created that shape. And if we now take a small piece and roll it around the end of the cable needle, that can now sit in the middle. And if I push it neater either side of my fingers, take it off the thing for you, we've now got that shape. And that, if you put the knitting needle, you put the cable needle back through the middle bit and press down diagonally across, that will stick in, and that is your first present with a little ribbon on top. So that's one way of doing it. Let's do another one. So this time we'll take 2 pieces the same length. Repeat exactly as we did before. So roll it flat in the middle, curve one piece over and put on top, curve the next piece over, put on top, same again, curve over, put on top, curve over, put on top. Take our first piece, put it diagonally on top of the present, but open it up slightly, so that our second piece fits right in the middle. So you can leave it like that. You could put a little gem in the middle or another little dot of clay, but you can also just pull those 4 pieces up so it looks like a nice bow on the top. So that's the second way of doing it. And the last way of doing this technique is to add an extra bit in the middle. So we're going to do our same again, our 2 loops, curve one over, same with the second piece, press down in the middle, curve it over, put them down exactly as we just did. First one down, open it up slightly so the second one will fit in place, but leave the second one open up slightly as well. And then, as we did previously, take an extra piece, put it around your needle, snip off with your fingers the extra bit and sit that piece in the middle. So now you've got 5 little curves. So there's an extra piece in the middle and all the pieces around the outside. So 3 different ways to do that one with 3 loops, 4 loops or 5 loops. You can also create a slightly more complex bow. So I've got a little bit of red clay and I've put it through on setting 7, so a thin setting of my pasta machine, and I've gone not quite an inch in length, so more like 2 centimetres. Take away any dirty bits, and I'm just going to cut very thin slices. You only need 4 per bow. So pull off your slice, and working on something like the measuring sheet or a laminated sheet is good because it makes it easy to work on. Create a cross, go across the diagonal and across the diagonal, and then starting with the piece that's on the underneath, you're simply going to pull it up and put it into the middle. And then repeat for the ones next door. Again, I find it easier having something like the cable needle or a craft knife or something just to help you pick the pieces up and push them in. Once you've done the first 4, go on to the diagonals. Until you end up with a little sort of ribbony bow, and then you can get one of your presents that you've already put the pieces on, put that up, press down, press down into the middle so it sits down nicely, and then create a colour that's going to match either your ribbon or the present. So we've got a little bit of this sort of tealy colour. So I'm going to take a teeny tiny little bit of that, roll it into a ball, and press that down into the centre. And that's another way of wrapping your teeny tiny presents. So there's some of the examples. I do about 6 per tree, but obviously you can do as many or as few as you like. And when I've got a selection done, as always, put them on a tile, wrap the whole thing, tent it in aluminium foil, and bake according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. So once these are baked, and once the tree's baked, we've got our final bit of putting it all together. When our pieces have finished baking, we need to make the base to put them on. So I've just used a piece of cardboard, and I've used a cutter to draw around, and that was 2 inches or 5 centimetres in diameter. I've got about 10 grams or 1/3 of an ounce of white, and put it through on a medium setting, so setting number 3 on my pasta machine. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces that are slightly rounder than my cardboard, and don't make it too neat because this adds a bit of interest to our bottom piece. And I'm also going to take a couple of rounds from a cutter, and that's about 2 centimetres or 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Just take a third one just to see. Might not need it, but we'll have a look-see. So I'm going to add a little bit of liquid polymer clay to the cardboard just to help the clay stick to it. You could use PVA glue instead. Put it on there. Put the other piece on top and just press the clay around the edge so it's nice and tight, so I've got absolutely no air trapped in there whatsoever. When I'm happy that it's all done, I'm just going to pull up those edges, round them off, because it gives a little bit of a ledge and an extra sort of softness to the snow look for the bottom of our tree. If you find it breaks wherever the cardboard is, that's fine. Just go back and press it around. And then we are going to take our piece of wire that we're using for the tree. So this is our 2mm wire. Push it right down through the middle with a pair of pliers. Just give it a bit of a curl so it comes up, and then push it back up through the cardboard so that it's nicely positioned in there. From this point on, I'm just going to work on a piece of baking parchment, but something to work with, grease-proof tracing paper, just something to work with to keep it in place. And I've just tipped that piece of wire over so it's nice securely in place. And then we're going to take our 2, in fact I will do all 3 pieces of the rounds, push them down. That's going to sit on top, and that will hide where the wire's poked through and give us a nice place to sit our pot on. And we're going to take just a tiny little piece of white clay, put it on the bottom, and just roll over just to hide where the wire has come through. I'm just going to pull down the excess clay from the outside just to smooth it slightly all the way around the edge, and also do the same with this middle bit just to sort of dome it off so we've got a little raised area in the middle, and continue around till it's nice and neat. So I've made it fairly smooth with my finger. I'm going to create a nice texture with just a piece of packing sponge or foam, the sort of thing you can get, say, which comes in packaging. So all I'm doing is pressing it down nice and hard all the way over the surface, up to the top of the wire and all the way down around the edge. And that gives us a nice sort of slightly snowy feel to the bottom. With our pieces baked and cooled, and these are some I actually made earlier, the same with the pot, we can now start to put all of our pieces together. I'm going to use a little bit of brown clay and some gold clay to add a star at the top. We've got some extra little bits of the leftover green just to sort of add a little bit in between all of our layers. So the first thing to go on is the pot. So you should hopefully just slide on, and because we've got unbaked clay underneath, you can just push the pot down so that it's nice and stable and sitting upright. I take a little bit of the brown clay, almost to give like a look of a trunk. You're not really going to see this much at all, but just gives you an extra sort of something below the bottom piece. And I'm just going to twist through, just give myself a hole going through, and then he can sit down on the piece. And that gives us something for our big piece to work through. Now what you often find is that wherever the hole was, right at the bottom it becomes covered over. So just give it a little bit of a press down with a needle or your piece of wire just to open the hole up, and hopefully your piece should slot down. And this is why we've pre-baked the pieces, because quite often these are slightly skew-if, so it goes one way or the other. But by putting it down like this, you can wiggle it slightly to get it nicely placed down on so it sits on top of the flower pot. Then a little bit of additional clay, just because as we did with the pieces inside, just to give a little bit of movement and so the next piece sits down. Same thing, check the hole, slot him on, and again have a look and manoeuvre. You can twist it round so you get it to a stage where it sits nicely, and then just repeat for the last couple of pieces. And there is our tree. And it doesn't matter if it looks slightly higgledy-piggledy, because each tree is going to be unique. So having got the tree on, I'm going to take a tiny little ball of white, just to give a white sort of snow-capped top to our piece. So push him on down till we get to the top of the tree. And then with my cable needle, I'm just going to pull that down just to make it look like there's some snow on the very top of the tree as well. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off the excess of the metal. So I'm going to go about 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres above. And then holding it on so I'm not bending the pieces that I've just put on. About half of that I'm going to bend away from me, and then with my pliers bring it back to create a little hook. We've got the hook on the top. Just make sure it's nicely centred. There we go. So hopefully you've got a relatively straight tree, and now we've got room to put a tiny little gold star or whatever else you want on top. Then if you've got a star cutter, the right size, perfect. I don't have, so I actually drew myself a tiny little star, cut it out, and that's what I now use to cut the stars on the top. I've put the gold clay on setting number 3, which is my medium setting. And I'm going to cut around the star twice. I've still got a little bit of liquid clay on the tip of my paintbrush, so just add a little bit onto the wire. You don't really need it, but it just makes it easier sometimes to position the clay, and you could of course use PVA glue instead if that's what you have. And then I'm just going to set the star on the top one side and then match it up on the other. Take as long as you need to finesse the star, but do make sure you've left room for a little bit of ribbon right at the very top. Once it's done, I will remove it from that and again put it on a tile, and as before tent the whole thing in aluminium foil and bake according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. Once your tree is out of the oven and it's all cooled, the next thing to do is decide whether or not you want to add any glitter decoration. I like to do this because I just think it sparkles if it's an ornament, just catches the light, but obviously you don't have to. And you can either add the glitter just to the tree or to the tree and to the base as well. So all we do for that is I've got a little bit of ordinary PVA or white glue, just the ordinary stuff that most people have around. And I've got a little bit on a piece of paper and a small paintbrush. And I've got some biodegradable micro glitters, and I've used a little bit of the silver and some of the white, and I'll add the details as to where I get mine from in the video description below. I've decanted a little bit of each of those into a small pot, and then I have a large bowl. So when my tree is all glued, I put the tree in there and simply tap the glitter all over. So quite a simple thing, you just decide how much you want to do. So I will fast forward through and show you how I add the glitter. But I don't want it on the presents, which is why we've done it at this stage before we add the baked presents. Having got him done, I can hold him right at the very top. Put him in the bowl and then have fun as we sprinkle the glitter over. Now we have a lovely little sparkly tree with just a bit of added glitter. So I'll just wait for that glitter to dry and then we'll add the presents and our decoration will be complete. So I've given myself a nice little selection of mixed colours, mixed ribbons, mixed designs. Say I find 6 fits quite nicely around the bottom, but obviously add as many as you want. If you don't want to rebake, because I'm planning on rebaking this once the presents are in situ, then you can simply use a good glue that will stick polymer clay to polymer clay and just stick them on the bottom. If you've got any poly paste, this is really good for just taking a small amount and just dabbing that on the bottom, because it's nice and thick, and you can then just position your presents where you want and just press them into place. If you don't have any of that or any nice thick substance, then the other way to do it is to roll yourself a small piece of white clay, roll a little ball, decide where your present's going to go, a little bit of liquid clay, or you could do PVA glue of course, put the white piece down, a little bit more liquid clay on top, and then you can take your present and really press it down to get it nicely in place. So that's 2 done. So that was the clay underneath, and that's the bit with the poly paste underneath. I will add the rest of the presents and then I will rebake again according to the manufacturer's instructions, and as always tenting the whole thing in aluminium foil to protect the clay should the oven spike during baking. When it's finished baking and cooled, I've just added a little bit of ribbon just in the very top, just to make it into a hanging decoration. Although of course you don't have to do that, and you could have chopped the wire off a little bit smaller just to have the star on top, and then it would simply be a tree decoration. However you want yours to be, with that lovely sparkle from the little bit of added glitter. Just to show you something else, this was my original idea, which I then decided was a little bit too much to do for a tutorial because this would have taken so much longer. But this is one of the glass baubles, and this one's got the little Christmas tree sat inside with the presents there, and I've got that lovely snowflake cutter on the top with a little bit of sparkliness to look like snow and some holly underneath. So if you fancy doing that instead, that's something else you can have a go with. And that's the tutorial finished. And here are the cute festive trees from polymer clay with their little presents all wrapped up and ready to be opened. I really hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks so much for watching, and a special thank you as always to those of you who subscribe. I really do appreciate it. I feel I need to go make a few more little trees, so I'll go and do that. And hopefully I'll see you next time for some more polymer clay fun. That's it for now. Bye.